لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. أما بعد, respected brothers, sisters, viewers, listeners, Alhamdulillah, today is our 26th or 27th lesson of the Fiqh series that we're doing here in Darul Ummah, and by reading the text that we are, Maraq al-Sa'adat, Ascent to Felicity, we have now reached the chapter of almsgiving or Zakat. And last week we started to speak about Zakat quite briefly. We reached up to the part when we were speaking about eligible recipients of Zakat, and that's only the second page. So what we'll do today, inshallah, just quickly recap from the beginning of the chapter with just a few lines, and then inshallah hopefully finish the chapter of Zakat and Sadaqatul Fitr or Fitrah today, inshallah. And our next lesson following that, bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala, with the permission of Allah, will be on Hajj. Be before Ramadan or after Ramadan, inshallah, that will be the next lesson, bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala. So let's get started. Whoever has the book, is page number 139. Almsgiving, Zakat. Zakat is defined as the transfer of ownership, tamlik, of a portion of wealth specified by the lawgiver, by the Sharia, to a particular person with this intention. So zakat has to be given with the intention of zakat to a particular type of person and a particular percentage of your wealth. And this giving has to be not in the sense of borrowing or temporarily using, but of complete ownership. So you give it over the 2.5%, or as we learn inshallah, whatever amount you give the percentage, whatever equates to the amount you give, has to be tamlik. You have to make them the owner, the person you give it to. It is obligatory fard on every free Muslim who is legally responsible. Legally responsible means 532 will tell you that the person is an adult and sane. You have to be an adult and sane for zakat to be fard upon you. So it is obligatory on every free Muslim who is legally responsible and who possesses the quantum, the zakatable amount, which is the nisab. So there are a few conditions for someone to have to pay zakat. Number one is that they have to be a free person, not for slaves. And obviously this is going back in history, or even if there's slavery somewhere in the world today, it's not obligatory on that person. And secondly, you have to be an adult. You have to be an adult, have reached the age of puberty, and also you need to be sane. So it's not fard upon mentally ill people or people who are not in their senses. And also you need to have the fourth condition, you have to own the nisab. The nisab, zakatable amount, 533 will tell you very nicely, is that there are two types of nisab. One nisab which says to you the amount you need to reach in terms of wealth for you to give zakat. At what point do you start giving zakat? And the other type of nisab is, at what point can you receive zakat? There is two extremes, or there's two sides to it. So the nisab that we're talking about is the point where you need to start giving zakat. Whether in monetary wealth or in trade goods, whose value is equivalent to the nisab of the wealth, over which a full lunar year has passed in excess of any debt and of basic personal needs. So there are a few things, we'll do it slowly inshallah. First of all, you need to have, fourth condition we've said is that you need to have nisab. Secondly, this nisab that you own, it can be in cash, it can be in silver, it can be in gold. Okay, so these are things that you own. It can also be in livestock and animals, but this particular text has not covered the rulings of livestock because this is quite a lengthy research and it's relevant to people who are not for every single person. So for those who are interested in that, maybe you can research those kind of books which cover the rules of livestock in terms of zakat. So it can be from cash, from silver, from gold, and also from trade goods. So anything you might have bought, even if it's a keyring, or many keyrings you bought for trade goods, then that's also going to be zakatable. Another condition is that this amount, this nisab that you own, a year has to pass over it. A lunar year has to pass over it. So for example, 10th of Muharram, you became the owner of the nisab. Until 10th of Muharram the following year, within that time, for that year, you need to give the zakat for that time. The nisab of gold is 20 mithqals. 538 will tell you approximately 87.48 grams of gold. 87.48 grams of gold, which is in today's calculation, a gram is about 30 pounds, just over 30 pounds. So if you say 31 pounds, if you were to do 31 times 87.4, 87.5, it would come up to near enough 2.5 grams, or about 3, coming up close to 3 grams. If you just do the calculation here, maybe exactly get the exact figure. So if you want to give your zakat based on it's 2,000 8. £2,658. 2,000, that's for gold. Now this is the amount in terms of gold wealth, or gold, or money equating to gold, you need to own for you to become responsible for giving zakat. There is a separate nisab for silver. For silver, it's going to tell you for which one pays 1 mithqal. The minimum nisab of silver is 200 dirhams. Now, the price of silver is less. So now the question comes, should I calculate my zakat based on gold or based on silver? Some ulama will tell you that you should, or some people prefer to do it by gold, others prefer to do it by silver. In fact, it's encouraged for you to calculate it based on silver. Why? Because then your nisab is lesser and you need to give zakat at a lower amount, meaning more people have to give zakat, because the nisab of silver is about 250-ish sort of pounds. 250-ish sort of pounds. So now, if you have every single person who owns 250-ish sort of pounds or more, 250 pounds or more giving zakat, then that's obviously more beneficial for those who are receiving zakat. As for if you do your nisab to go, if you calculate it according to the gold, then not everybody, not as many people own £2,500. Do you see? So it's preferred to calculate your zakat based on, or your nisab based on the silver amount. Okay, and for silver, so generally now today's day and age, if you own £300 onwards, okay, and you've held that £300, it might have fluctuated in the middle of the year, gone up and down, 250, 270, but as long as at the beginning of your lunar year, which might be Muharram, which might be Safar, and you come back to it, then you need to, as long as a year has passed over it, and you've held that money, or you've had that same amount of wealth or a similar amount, as long as maintained the nisab amount, then you need to give your zakat, which is 2.5%. For any amount, I'm going to skip that, for any amount, we've read that already before, and it's quite irrelevant. The value of trade goods is combined with one's gold and silver, both which are also added together by value. Okay, move on quickly. Eligible recipients of zakat. Who can receive your zakat? The recipients of zakat are mentioned strictly in the Quran in the ayah إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ. Who are these people? An indigent person who is a faqir, i.e. possessing less than the nisab, whether by actual gold and silver or by valued goods, even if he is healthy and earning a living. A faqir person can be earning a living, but it's just not enough for him to get by. He's still quite poor. He does not own the nisab. You understand what I'm trying to say? So therefore, a faqir, an indigent person, and this nisab that is 542 will tell you that this nisab that he's talking about is nisab hirman zakat. Now look, like I said to you before, there are two types of nisab. One for paying zakat, and another amount which basically means that if you, so for example, we've already said the amount, the nisab for paying zakat is say £250. As for the amount, if you own, you can't receive zakat, is a bit different. If you go back to page 139, we'll tell you nisab hirman zakat is the minimum amount of wealth by which one would become ineligible to receive zakat, though he may not have to pay it either. It is the same amount of wealth as the first type. So meaning, if someone owns the nisab amount, but not necessarily a year has passed over it, not necessarily his wealth has gone beyond it, does that make sense? Or maybe this wealth that he owns is not all in cash. It might be, on say for example, he owns a phone or other sort of pricey things. He doesn't have it as cash. So therefore, if you have the nisab amount, okay, then it doesn't, just by owning the nisab amount, you don't have to always pay zakat on it. There are a few other conditions, which is the fact that it has to be in cash, gold, or silver, and also a year has to pass over it. Now, if say for example you don't have to pay zakat, does that mean instantaneously you can now receive zakat? You have £250, for example. You have £300. You have a few, sort of good sellable items. You have quite a few valuable items that you own. No, it doesn't mean that you can straight away receive zakat. You have to be a faqir person who is so unwealthy or so poor, who doesn't even have this amount of money, which is the £250. Does that make sense? An indigent person possessing less than the nisab, whether by actual gold and silver or by valid goods, even if he is healthy and earning a living. So he might have a job, but he doesn't earn that kind of money. Does that make sense? So for example, someone working in Bangladesh or in Pakistan, he might be working, he might be pulling a rickshaw, whatever he does, but he doesn't actually save up that kind of money. So therefore he doesn't have to give, therefore he can actually receive zakat, because he doesn't actually own that £250 mark of money yet, nor has he held it for years, so you have to pay zakat. A poor person, miskin, is a person who has nothing at all. So faqir and then a miskin as well. A slave working to free himself. There are different types of slaves. A slave sometimes is given the offer by his master that if you pay me the value of your ownership, then I will let you free. So this kind of slave is called a mukatab. You can give your zakat to that kind of a person, a slave who is trying to free himself. A person in debt, you can, 544 will explain to you a bit more detail. The fact that his debt has taken his wealth below the nisab. Okay, so not just any debt. A person who's in debt, but that debt has made him poorer than the nisab. Does that make sense? Because so many big people, rich people are also in debt. Does that mean they can take zakat? No. So therefore, a person in debt whose wealth, because of his debt, has gone below the nisab amount. A soldier cut off from his group, a pilgrim cut off from his group, obviously this is from back in the day. A wayfarer who, despite possessing the wealth in his homeland, has nothing, as in is not attached to it. Someone who's completely lost all their cards, lost their wallet, ends up in the desert. Okay, and you found somebody, he's completely like shredded, he has nothing. Now you decide, should I give him my zakat? He's completely lost. Like he has no connection to his homeland. You can aid him in that particular scenario until obviously he goes back to his home and then he becomes wealthy again. One who works as a state zakat collector. Zakat collectors can also benefit from the zakat money that's collected, but this zakat collector has to be assigned by the government, by the Khalifa or by the Islamic government or the government of the country, not just any volunteers. So this is very, very important. Of course, then you can ask, like, how do all these big institutions run? A lot of them they have 100% donation policy. So what they do is they give all of the money, but some of the money that they use to maintain the company is from the gift aid. There's a gift aid. Other times they use it, they do other stuff like functions and events and stuff like this. So they might invest a bit of money into an event, into a program, and then whatever profit they make from that money, which is not actually the zakat or sadaqah or anything that's given, but rather they return the profit, they can use it to run the institution or the zakat firm or the charity. Okay, now we've understood who can receive the zakat. Now there are some people who can't receive the zakat. Who are they? The one paying zakat can choose to give it to the recipients of all of the above categories. So you can give it to anyone, or any one or category of them, regardless of whether or not recipients of the categories are present. Zakat may not be given to any of the following. You can't give your zakat to the following. You can give sadaqah, other kind of aids, but you can't give zakat to a non-Muslim. A wealthy person who possesses the nisab in any form of wealth. Okay, so the nisab amount of say £250, if you calculate them according to your silver, then in that case, this person who owns in any form of wealth, a phone, shoes, top, bottoms, trousers, okay, he cannot be receiving zakat because he's considered to be a wealthy person who owns the nisab. A Hashimi, a freed slave of the Hashimite, although Imam Tahawi maintained that they are eligible to be recipients of zakat. So Hashimi meaning someone who's connected to the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, they are not to be receiving zakat. One's parents or grandparents, you can't give zakat to your parents or your grandparents. One's child or grandchild, you can't give zakat to your children or to your grandchildren. One's wife or husband, because this is, you can see, if this was allowed, this is a massive loophole. I'll just give zakat to my wife, she gives it back to me. It's not going to work out. It's not going to serve the purpose of what it's supposed to serve, which is helping out the poor people and those who need and those A-listed people above. One slave, even one working for himself. So you can't give your money as zakat to your own slave. One's partially freed slave, so your slave still, to pay for a deceased person's funeral shroud. You can't pay for someone's. I'm not going to give my zakat for someone who's just a random person that's passed away to buy his shroud, his kafan. However, if it's someone really poor who needs the money anyway, then that's a different scenario, you can give it. To pay off a deceased person's debt. Okay, you can't give it to pay off a deceased person's debt unless this person is again faqir or falls under one of the categories mentioned above. Or to purchase a slave to be freed. You can't say, I'm going to be generous, I'm going to free this slave with my zakat money. It doesn't work like that. You can give your zakat money if he's poor afterwards, but you can't free a slave with that money. If one pays zakat after having made an honest effort to ensure that the recipients were eligible, then he finds out the recipients were not eligible, finds out they were his grandparents or children or grandchildren somehow, or that he was a slave or Hashimi for and so on and so forth, then it is still valid because he has still tried his best to make sure that he gave his zakat to the right people. It is disliked to give an amount of wealth to an eligible recipient such that he would then own the nisab, meaning when you give zakat, you should give it to a person in an amount which does not, go beyond his needs. You should share it out if needs be. So give it to one person, two person, three persons, okay? And you shouldn't make them reach a certain, you shouldn't give too much to one person so that other people are deprived from it. It is preferred, however, to give enough to a recipient such that he needs not ask for money for food to anybody. So give enough, but don't give too much as well, because that will distract you from giving it to other people. And also giving him so much. Say for example, a huge amount like £250, or as the nisab amount. What have you done by giving him so much? You've made him wealthy. He can't now receive the zakat anymore. Do you see? So he has to still be a recipient of the zakat. It is disliked to pay one's zakat after the completion of the lunar year to a recipient in another land. So after the completion, if you wanna, your year is already finished, and you wanna send it abroad, it's gonna take more time to get there. It's disliked. But hold on. What does it mean for people that will have family abroad, cousins or neighbors abroad? You can give abroad, especially. But the main thing is you shouldn't delay it more than the lunar year, and also you shouldn't receive there or reach there too late. Unless the recipient is a relative, one who is needier, one who is in stricter and adherence to the religion, or one who is more beneficial to Muslims through teaching. Okay, it is disliked to pay one's zakat after the completion of the lunar year to a recipient in another land, unless, so now this particular, it is disliked for you to give your money to a person in another country after the lunar year, unless this person that you're giving it to is one of your neighbors, is more needy, okay, is more needy than the person that's close to you, is someone of your cousins, so on and so forth. Does that make sense, inshallah? Okay. It is preferable to pay zakat to relatives, starting with the nearest of kin, and then to one's neighbors, then to one's district, then to members of one's profession, then to fellow citizens. So obviously you can't give zakat to your parents and to your wife and to your husband, but after that, those who are of next of kin to you, your cousins and relatives, you should start off with them, and then your neighbors, and then those in your village and your district. That's zakat done. Okay. Someone asked a question last week about, do I have to pay zakat if I have a mortgage? I have a mortgage, a house. Now this depends. So for example, if you have a mortgage of a house and your ultimate target from all the money that you own is to pay your mortgage ASAP, meaning after you paid, the moment you get your paycheck, £2,000, for example, a month, you give like almost all of it to your mortgage because you're trying to get rid of it as soon as possible because you don't want to incur more charges. Then in this particular scenario, someone who's trying extremely hard or spending all of the money on paying their mortgage off and only keeps for himself a little bit amount that he can survive for the rest of the month. And for that person, there is no zakat because he's using all of the money that he has to, it's an immediate debt he's paying off. Okay, it's an immediate debt he's paying off for the mortgage. That's if you have taken the responsibility of paying it ASAP and you're using all of your money. Now the second question, the question that comes from there is, what if it's the mortgage that most people have, which is like you pay £700 or £600 or £500, but you still have £1,200 left. So you're not exactly poor now. And also, it's not an immediate debt you pay over 25 years or more than that. So therefore, in this scenario, what do? Do you pay zakat, or do you count yourself as someone indebted to your house that you have bought, which is £250,000? What do you do? But at the same time, this debt is not immediate. You're not paying it with all of the money that you have. All of your money is not being eaten up by that debt. So what do you do? In this particular scenario, there is a difference of opinion. Some ulama have maintained the original status, which is that you don't have to give zakat because you're still essentially in debt, while the stronger opinion in this particular scenario of mortgage is that you should still give zakat based on what you have remaining after paying your mortgage. Does that make sense? Because this mortgage that you pay is a fixed amount, £700-800, but you are still owning the nisab from the amount that you have afterwards. So £1,200, £1,000, you should still give zakat on that amount. Is that clear, inshallah? If Ibn Hajj asked that question, I'll probably repeat it to him, inshallah, when I see him. I was hoping he would be here. Anyway, charity at the end of Ramadan, Sadaqatul Fitr. Let's quickly read this, inshallah. Sadaqatul Fitr, or Fitrah we call it, is mandatory wajib on every free Muslim who is legally responsible mukallaf. So legally responsible here again, 556 will tell you, is the adult and sane person. You have to be an adult and you have to be sane for you to be, and you have to also be a free Muslim to give the Fitrah. Possessing the nisab in excess of any debts or basic personal needs. So you need to own the nisab. What's the nisab? Which nisab? Is the nisab of zakat? It is the nisab of zakat, but from a different angle, it's the nisab hirman of zakat. 557, this is the nisab hirman of zakat. So now, Zakat, for you to pay zakat, like we said, the nisab, £250, 300 pounds, whatever it is, you have to own it in cash or gold. Cash and gold or silver, does that make sense? If it's in, say for example, phone and shoes and stuff, then that's not counted. Whereas if it's for the nisab of hirman or zakat, the one that the other type of nisab would prevent you from receiving zakat, meaning as long as you are not a receiver of zakat, then you should give fitrah. Does that make sense? So the bar is lower, meaning more people have to give fitrah. In excess of any debts and of basic personal needs. It is mandatory on behalf of oneself. You should give fitrah on yourself, upon yourself or on behalf of yourself. On one's child who is a minor, you're supposed to give fitrah on behalf of your children. One's slave used for personal service. One's slave promised freedom upon owner's death, a mudabbar. One's female slave who is a walad, who is the mother of the owner's child, and so on and so forth. But the point being is, when it comes to fitrah, you should give your fitrah on behalf of those who are dependent upon you. Your wife, is she dependent upon you? Well, if you want to give it on her behalf, it's not a problem, but she should officially be giving her own fitrah. So it's technically she should be giving it, but you can give it on her behalf, it will still count. Coming to children now. Children, do you have to give always your children's fitrah, even though they might be quite wealthy? What does that mean? For example, this child has got a bank account because of an insurance claim or something, okay, and this child owns effectively £6,000. It's in his account, but when he's 18 he can use it. You can't use it just yet, but the child actually owns it. It's in his name. So now, do you take the money for the fitrah from his account, or do you give it yourself? You have a choice. You can give it yourself, but you can also take it from the amount of the amount that he has saved up. Now imagine the child has got no one to pay it on his behalf. So now the child is now turned 18, and now he realized, over the past 18 years, I've had this money since I was born. It was left for me in my account. What he should do is go back for those 18 years and pay fitrah for each one of the years. Does that make sense? Because he held that money for that time. So he should backdate it. Okay, it is mandatory. It is not mandatory on behalf of one slave working for his own freedom. So he's mudabbar. So those who are dependent. The slave who's working to free himself is not dependent on him because he's working, making money, and trying to free himself. One's child, son or daughter who is an adult, you don't have to give fitrah for your adult children. One's wife, a co-owned slave, or a runaway slave, kidnapped slave, or an imprisoned slave, except for after their return. So it doesn't mean you make a slave run away or you kidnap a slave. It means if your slave has been kidnapped or run away, then you don't give it. You don't give the fitrah for him until he comes back to make sure they're still alive. Does that make sense? Not like you take someone. If someone kidnaps someone else's slave, no. It's if your one gets kidnapped, and then what do? You should wait until he comes back for you to pay the fitrah. The amount of fitrah due is 2.2 kgs, half a sa', which is 2.2 kgs of wheat, flour, or sawiq, which is about £5. We give about £5 worth of fitrah every year. Or a sa', 4.4 kgs of dates. Again, it's about £5, right? Unless it's like really expensive dates. The Jordan stuff, they're probably about £10. But generally dates are about £5 a kg. Raisins or barley, which equals 8 litres according to that's Iraqi standards. This is different. But the point being is, if the amount that you should give in fitrah is about £5 or so. Usually in Eid time, the Imam say an ounce anyway. It's about £5. It is permissible to pay by monetary value of one of the above amounts. So you can give £5 money. This is actually superior when it's time of ease. Now, for example, at a time where money can buy you, money can be spent more freely, you should give the money. But if, say for example, now it's a time of famine in Bangladesh or in Somalia, should you give the money or should you give the actual wheat or the dates or the actual food that you're supposed to give? They're saying here that it's preferred for you to give the food because giving the money is not the solution. They don't need money, they need food. So in a scenario where they can easily buy, money is better because that gives them more freedom. But in a scenario where they can't spend the money easily because there's not enough food to buy in the market anyway, then you should give the food because why? That's going to be more helpful for the person that's receiving. The time in which Sadaqatul Fitr becomes mandatory, when do you have to give Sadaqatul Fitr, is from the Fajr of the Eid al-Fitr Jai. Okay, so the first day of Sha'ban. No, what am I saying? Ramadan, Shawwal, first day of Shawwal, sorry. Shaban is before. Okay, so that from the Fajr of the day of Eid al-Fitr until so the becoming is when the Fajr comes in of the Eid al-Fitr. Therefore, if one dies or becomes indigent before that time, or if one becomes a Muslim or retains wealth thereby possessing nisab, or is born after that time, then it is not mandatory for them. Meaning, if someone died before Fajr of Eid day, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, very sad situation, but he doesn't have to give, because it didn't become wajib upon him because he didn't reach that time. And also, if someone was born, if someone became a Muslim, was born after that time, then also it doesn't have to be given for them. It is preferable to pay it before leaving for the Eid prayer, Musalla, yet it is valid if one pays it beforehand or afterwards, although delaying it is disliked. So if you pay it before is fine, you can pay it on the day, you can pay it also afterwards, but paying it afterwards is not preferred, it's disliked. Every person should pay it to one indigent person, even if to a non-Muslim resident of Muslim lands, a dhimmi, sorry. So every person should pay to one indigent person. So you should spread it out, so everyone receives something, everyone receives some sort of Eid gift or can celebrate something. You can also give it to Muslims living in, non-Muslims living in non-Muslim lands, as long as they are considered to be living according to the law and paying the tax and so on and so forth. Obviously this, again, probably relevant now. One may not split it between two indigent persons, faqirs, although there is a disagreement among the jurists on this matter. So I have £5, so I give 250 to two different people. Or no, some people say it's better, some people say no. Point being is you can give it to one person, you can give it to two people depending on the need. It is permissible for a group of people to pay their combined sadaqatul fitr to one recipient according to the sound position. So now, for example, your brothers, your sisters, you want to give all of your fitrah to a particular person who's a cousin or something back home because he needs it and he's faqir and can receive it. £5, you want to give it £20, £30, you can do that as well, inshallah. Wallahu ta'ala a'la wa a'lam. That's it. The next part is pilgrimage and hajj. Any questions? Good.
I've got a question now for us. I've got a few questions.
That's fine.
So when you live in a non-Muslim country, how do you appoint a zakat collector, or do you appoint one? How does it work?
So this is again. This is different. Like it's going to come into a modern mas'ala. What do you do in a system where there is no Islamic leadership or Islamic government? In this particular scenario, some ulama do or will allow, for example, the zakat collecting bodies to take some of that money for running the institution. Okay, but then obviously these are not the ones that pronounce themselves to be 100% donation policy. So therefore, again, this is completely when there is no government. When there is no government, so that would be allowed because of the necessity. Otherwise, no one's collecting, no one's delivering, so on and so forth. But generally, this is something a position appointed by the government.
Okay. Another question: some people take zakat money to run TV channels, for example.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Is that okay?
It's actually not. According to the authentic position, it's not allowed.
Mm.
Why? And this might be quite harsh to accept, or hard to accept. Why? Because the same goes for madrasas. Running madrasas, education institutes, even masjids. And we've read that before on the footnotes that you can't run it based on zakat money. Why? Because Allah said in the Quran that the recipients of zakat are limited by the word innama, bil-hasr wal-qasr, which basically means only these people can be receiving zakat, and masjids and TV channels are not one of those. Or so this is something. But what happens is a lot of fuqaha or some fuqaha have allowed it based on the general good that comes out of it, or other aspects, other benefits that they have basically allowed it indirectly, even though it's not directly and specifically mentioned. There are people that are strongly against that though, because if you think on a realistic, it's not an emotional decision, but also if you look at the purposes of zakat is supposed to give food to the bellies of those who really, really need it, who own less than the nisab amount. Okay, who don't have enough, who have less than £250,
yeah.
They're quite poor, right? So now these people are supposed to be receiving the zakat. Now, if you're going to say no, let's forget them, let's give it to from a TV channel or a masjid, or to renew the carpet of a masjid, it doesn't go towards the goal of zakat. You see, it doesn't feed the poor people that are, and the best form of charity is to put food in people's bellies, to feed a hungry person. That's according to hadith, right? So therefore, I think the majority opinion they shouldn't, but some have found leeway and they've allowed it. I know, for example, there are some TV channels, without mentioning the names, that do use it. So I'm sure they find a justification, but generally no. I would personally say don't. If you had a choice of giving money to Somalia, or like Syria, or to a TV channel, I think the decision is quite obvious.
Yeah. Another question. When it comes to giving all your zakat to one person, for example, and you want to give them a lot, but you have the intention that if you give them a lot of zakat next year, they won't be, falling under zakat, under that nisab level, so they'll be out of that poverty. So is that one way to do it?
So what would happen is, say for example, you want to give a person £300. Okay, but the moment you've given him £250, he's not recipient of the zakat anymore.
So only up to that level.
Yeah, so you have to give it. That's why it's disliked for you to give zakat an excessive amount until which makes them go beyond, because it's for faqir, for miskin, and the list is there. You know what the list is now. So you shouldn't make them go out of that bar, because then they can't receive the zakat anymore.
Okay.
Also, you can give it up to that bar so that it can suffice them for a good amount of time.
Okay.
Inshallah.
And last question.
Go for it.
Sadaqatul Fitr. So some people give it just before the prayer, but it doesn't. The other person doesn't receive it. So how does that work? Is it okay?
Okay, so yeah, so basically you can. It's preferred. The best way is that it should be sent to the person. The other person should, but the condition is that you should pay it. It becomes wajib upon you from the fajr and before you go to musalla. Okay, so you can give it before if for the purpose of it being or for the purpose of it reaching the person that you want it to reach to, but it's not going to be a problem if you give it as well, inshallah. It's because it's your responsibility. Have you done your responsibility, right? Same with zakat. Zakat, you might pay it in Muharram, but by the time it actually gets applied, it might be 2-3 months later. But the thing is, have you done your responsibility? Same with like tax, right? You might take your tax out, but by the time you reach the Queen's Fund, you might take.
I guess you fulfilled your responsibility.
Exactly. So it's yes. Okay. سبحانك اللهم واشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.